Commander Ethan Cole had spent most of his career on worlds that technically shouldn't matter. Dead moons, frozen rocks, places where nothing changed except the price per kilogram of oxygen. Europa was supposed to be just another line on that list. A white sphere of ice and silence orbiting Jupiter, written off by every major agency as a scientific checkpoint at best and a burial ground for funding at worst. That was the official narrative. Ethan didn't believe in narratives. He believed in readings. And the readings on Europa were starting to lie. The drilling operation had been running for 73 days. The ice was thicker than predicted, far thicker. Every kilometer down had been a battle against pressure, fracture risk, and machinery failure. The kind of job where optimism was considered a safety hazard. Inside the subterranean habitat module, the air always tasted faintly of recycled metal and burnt filters. Monitors lined every wall, each one showing a different slice of Europa's frozen interior like an autopsy performed in real time. Ethan stood in front of the central console, arms crossed, watching the drill telemetry scroll downward. "Depth?" he asked without looking away. Engineer Malik Reeves didn't answer immediately. That alone made Ethan turn. Malik's eyes were locked on a secondary feed. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Not typing, hesitating. "We just crossed 12.3 kilometers, Malik said finally. "That's within margin," Ethan replied. "It's not the depth, say." That got his attention. Malik enlarged the seismic feed. The screen shifted from chaotic ice fracturing patterns to something structured. Repeating. Too structured. Ethan stepped closer. "Explain." "We hit a density anomaly at 12.1, Malik said. "At first I thought it was basaltic intrusion. But the symmetry is wrong." "Wrong how?" Malik swallowed. "It's geometric." The word hung in the air like a misfire. Commander Lila Morgan, the mission's tactical lead, pushed away from her chair and came over. "Geometric doesn't survive under that kind of pressure for millions of years." "Exactly," Malik said. The feed zoomed further. At first, it looked like interference, patterns in the ice that could almost be mistaken for natural stress fractures. Almost. But the longer Ethan stared, the more his brain refused to categorize it as geology. Straight lines, repeating angles, perfect spacing between structural voids. It wasn't random. It wasn't even close. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "That's not rock." "No," Malik said quietly. "It's not." For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound in the room was the steady hum of life support systems and the distant, rhythmic thud of the drill continuing its descent into something it was never meant to find. Then the seismic graph shifted. A single spike. Clean. Sharp. Impossible to misread. Ethan straightened immediately. "Was that us?" Malik shook his head once. No external impact registered. That came from below the drill head. Lila frowned. "Ice shift." "It's too precise," Malik said. "It's repeating." Ethan watched as the spike appeared again. Same amplitude. Same interval. Like a heartbeat. Except Europa wasn't supposed to have one. "Run a cross-spectrum analysis," Ethan ordered. Malik complied instantly. Fingers flying over the console. Lines of data collapsed and reformed into a new visualization. And then everything in the room went quiet in a different way. Because the pattern wasn't just repeating. It was responding. Every time their drill advanced, the signal adjusted. Not randomly, not chaotically, but as if it were tracking them. Lila took a slow step back. "Tell me that's a sensor error." Malik didn't look up. "I wish it was." Ethan stared at the screen, his mind already moving ahead of his instincts. "Amplify the signal. I want raw output." "That's a bad idea," Malik said immediately. "Do it." A pause. Then Malik initiated the amplification. At first, nothing changed. Then the feed stabilized, and the pattern became unmistakable. It wasn't just a pulse. It was structured, led, multiple frequencies interwoven like code built into physics itself. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest that had nothing to do with Europa's temperature. "Is it natural?" Lila asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Malik shook his head slowly. "Nothing natural encodes redundancy like that." A new alert flashed across the console. "External reception." Ethan frowned. "We're not transmitting." "We're not," Malik confirmed. "Then who is?" No one answered immediately, because the system had already begun decoding the incoming data. And it wasn't coming from Earth. It was coming from orbit, from something watching them. And beneath the ice of Europa, the signal changed again. Subtle, immediate, unmistakable. It had noticed the attention, and it responded. Faster, stronger, closer. The first thing everyone agreed on later was that they should have stopped. The second thing they agreed on was that nobody would have listened if they had. Because once something buried 12 kilometers under alien ice starts reacting to you, stopping stops being an option. The drill didn't slow. It adapted. Commander Ethan Cole watched the live feed with a tight jaw as the borehead widened the breach. The system should have been hitting resistance, fracture instability, ice collapse, unpredictable voids. Instead, everything smoothed out as if the environment itself was reorganizing around the intrusion. That was the first real violation of physics they couldn't explain away. Structural integrity of the bore tunnel is increasing, Malik Reeves said, confusion creeping into his voice. That's impossible. We're carving a hole into a stress-loaded ice shell. It should be collapsing. Lila Morgan leaned over the console. Show me pressure readings. Malik pulled them up. The numbers made no sense. External pressure fluctuations were flattening. Not dissipating, flattening. Like something was actively balancing the damage they were doing. Ethan exhaled slowly. It's compensating. Compensating for what? Lila asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately, because he didn't like the direction his thoughts were going. Then the cameras switched, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the ice above them. The borehead broke through into a void. Not rock, not ice. A hollow chamber, perfectly formed, extending farther than the floodlights could reach. Malik zoomed the feed. That's not a cavity created by geology. No, Ethan said quietly. It's engineered. The chamber walls weren't rough. They weren't layered like sediment or fractured like ice. They were smooth, too smooth, like something had been cast or grown with intent, and etched into them were patterns. Not random formations, not mineral veins. Symbols, repetitive structures that spiraled outward in fractal geometry, converging toward the center of the void. Lila narrowed her eyes. Is that circuitry? Malik hesitated. Not electronics. It's spatial structuring. Like the chamber itself is part of a system. Then the camera drifted lower, and found movement. At first, it looked like shifting debris in the darkness. A slow ripple through suspended particulate matter. But then the ripple resolved into shape. A laid surface beneath the chamber floor. Something that had been resting. Something that was now waking. Stop the drill, Ethan ordered instantly. Malik's fingers froze above the controls. Say, stop it now. But before Malik could comply, the system sent an automated alert. Drill advancement locked. Manual override denied. Lila spun toward him. We didn't set that. Ethan already knew the answer. No, he said. We didn't. The chamber lights flickered as if reacting to the presence within the void. The feed adjusted exposure automatically, revealing more detail, and the surface below began to unfold. Not crack, not break, unfold, like something with layers of dormant structure peeling open after a long sleep. The geometry of it was wrong for anything biological. Too precise, too consistent, too vast to be mechanical in any conventional sense. And yet it moved with intention. Malik whispered, it's reacting to the drill. As if confirming his statement, the movement paused, then shifted direction, upward, toward them. Lila took a step back from the console. We're not supposed to be here. Ethan kept his eyes on the screen. We already are. A low-frequency vibration began to build through the habitat floor. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss as equipment resonance. But it deepened quickly, synchronizing with the pulse they had detected earlier. The heartbeat. Only now it was no longer distant. It was surrounding them. Malik checked external sensors. His face tightened. Sir, the signal is changing. Changing how? Ethan asked. It's not just below us anymore. Lila turned sharply. Define that. Malik hesitated for half a second too long. It's above us too. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Ethan stepped closer to the main feed. Show orbital tracking. Malik complied. Europa's thin, hostile sky filled the secondary display. Sparse satellite debris, mission relays, their own orbiting support platform, and something else. A signal source that had not been there before. Position locked directly above the drilling site. Stationary. Observing. Ethan felt something cold tighten in his chest. That wasn't in the insertion log. It wasn't there 10 minutes ago either, Malik said. The chamber feed shifted again. The structure beneath the ice had fully opened now. And at its center, deep within the geometric void, something like an eye formed. Not an eye in the biological sense. A convergence point. A lens. A focus of attention that seemed to align perfectly with the drill camera. Directly. Unambiguously. Looking back at them, the system registered a new transmission. Incoming signal locked. Not from Europa. Not from orbit. From beyond. And the nest, whatever it truly was, responded instantly. Its entire structure pulsed once. Hard. Like a warning being issued through the fabric of the moon itself. Ethan didn't move. He couldn't. Because for the first time since arriving on Europa, he understood something fundamental. They were not the first thing to wake it. They were just the ones who had woken it loud enough to be noticed. The nest did not behave like something that had just woken up. It behaved like something that had been waiting for someone specific to arrive. And now that someone had arrived, it was learning them. Dr. Sienna Park noticed it first in the language model logs. She stood in the corner of the command module, one end pressed against a tablet as lines of decoded signal data streamed faster than the system was designed to process. Her eyes didn't blink for several seconds at a time. That's not random noise anymore, she said finally. Ethan turned. Explain. Sienna enlarged the waveform projection. The familiar pulse from beneath Europa was still there, but now it had structure layered on top of it. Additional encoding patterns, nested like recursion. It's imitating us, she said. Lila frowned. Imitating what? Sienna hesitated, then rotated the display. On screen, fragments of Earth origin transmissions began appearing inside the alien signal. Old NASA telemetry formats, deep space probe handshake protocols, even fragments of military encryption bursts that had never been broadcast outside secure channels. Malik stepped closer. That's impossible. Those systems aren't publicly accessible. Sienna shook her head. It's not accessing them. It's reconstructing them. The room went quiet. Ethan narrowed his eyes. From what? Sienna looked up at him. From us. That didn't help. Be specific, Lila said sharply. Sienna took a breath. Every signal we've ever sent into space. Every broadcast. Every leak. Every reflected transmission that bounced off planetary bodies or dust clouds. It's been collecting it. Folding it. Rebuilding it into a model of how we communicate. Malik's expression tightened. So it's decoding us. No, Sienna said quietly. It's learning us. A soft alarm chimed from the central console. New transmission detected. Ethan stepped forward immediately. Source. Malik's fingers moved quickly. Same origin as before, subsurface. But it's different now. Different how? Sienna answered before Malik could. It's structured. The display updated. The nest signal had changed again. The chaotic, pulsing rhythm they'd first detected was gone. In its place was something disturbingly clean. Orderly. Predictive. Like a language forming itself in real time. Malik frowned. It's adapting faster than our decryption algorithms. Sienna nodded once. It's no longer just copying patterns. It's testing them. Ethan crossed his arms. Testing for what? Sienna didn't answer immediately. She stared at the data as if it was staring back. Then she said, consistency. Another alert flashed. Incoming response from orbital source. Lila turned sharply. We're being answered. Malik pulled up the feed. Above Europa, the unknown signal source had begun transmitting back. Not in bursts. Not in fragments. In continuous structured reply. Ethan felt the shift immediately. That's not random. Sienna's voice was low. No, that's dialogue. A second waveform appeared on screen, overlapping the nest signal. The two structures began interacting, adjusting to each other like opposing forces finding equilibrium. Malik's face went pale. They are communicating. Lila stepped closer. Who is they? No one answered that immediately, because the nest signal suddenly sharpened, and for the first time, it stopped broadcasting into the void. It focused directly on them. Sienna stiffened. It's isolating our transmissions. Ethan turned. Meaning? It's filtering out everything except us, she said. It's narrowing attention. Malik swallowed. Like it knows where we are. Sienna didn't look away from the screen. Like it always knew. The habitat lights flickered once. Then again, the floor beneath them vibrated in a slow, rhythmic pattern that matched the nest's pulse exactly. Lila looked down. That wasn't synchronized before. Ethan already knew what was happening. It's aligning with us. Sienna shook her head quickly. Not aligning. Calibrating. A new data stream appeared on her tablet without input. She froze. Ethan noticed immediately. What is it? Her fingers hovered over the screen. It's output. From what system? Sienna looked up slowly. Not ours. Malik leaned in. Then whose? Sienna turned the tablet toward them. The display showed something simple. Too simple. A structured sequence of signal packets, arranged in increasing complexity. Each one mirrored human communication patterns more closely than the last. But at the end of the sequence was a translation attempt. Incomplete. Still forming. And underneath it, a single phrase. Not in any known language, but rendered in contextual approximation by the system. Model completing human pattern reconstruction. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. It's building a model of us. Sienna nodded slowly. Yes. Lila crossed her arms tightly. For what purpose? The nest answered. Not through words. Through action. The pulse beneath Europa suddenly intensified. The chamber feed from the drill site flickered, then stabilized. And deep within the structure, something shifted again. Not awakening. Not reacting. Deciding. Malik stepped back from the console. That's not observation anymore. Sienna whispered. It's evaluation. Ethan stared at the screen as the orbital signal and the nest signal continued their exchange. Faster now. More precise. And then the realization came. Not as a theory, but as a certainty forming too fast to stop. This isn't first contact, he said quietly. Lila looked at him. What is it then? Ethan didn't take his eyes off the data. It's assessment. The nest signal surged one more time. And somewhere deep beneath Europa's ice, something that had been learning humanity from its very first broadcast finally reached a conclusion, and began preparing its response. The first sign that something had changed was silence. Not absence of noise. Europa never truly offered that. But a sudden collapse of the laid signals they had been tracking for hours. The nest's output, once dense and adaptive, went flat for exactly 1.7 seconds. In mission logs, that kind of gap would normally be dismissed as transmission lag or sensor desynchronization. Hey, it felt intentional, like a breath being held. Then the orbital feed lit up. Malik Reeves was the one who saw it first. We've got retained signal, but it's not matching any known protocol. Ethan stepped closer immediately. Source. Malik zoomed in on the orbital map. Above Europa, their support satellite array flickered with interference, but beyond it, something else had appeared in the data stream. A structured emission point. Stable. Geostationary relative to nothing they recognized. That wasn't there before, Lila Morgan said. It's there now, Malik replied. Sienna Park leaned in, eyes narrowing as she overlaid spectral analysis. This isn't local interference. The signal is coming from beyond Jovian orbit. Ethan frowned. Define beyond. Sienna hesitated. Outer system boundary. Possibly interstellar origin. The room tightened. Malik swallowed. So we're not alone in this exchange. Sienna didn't answer directly. We were never the initiators. The orbital signal stabilized, and the system automatically began decoding. At first, it looked like noise, compressed, layered, recursive patterns beyond standard decryption parameters. Then the structure emerged. Not human, not machine in any Earth origin sense, but structured with intention, and it was responding to the nest. Ethan watched as the two signals, subsurface and orbital, interlocked like opposing currents finding equilibrium in a shared medium. They're already communicating, he said quietly. Sienna nodded. Yes, and we're not part of the primary conversation. Lila crossed her arms. Then what are we? Sienna didn't look away from the data. The trigger. The word hung in the air. Malik shook his head. That doesn't make sense. We drilled into it. We activated the response. Sienna finally looked up. We didn't activate it. We intersected it. A new transmission spike hit the console. This one came from the orbital source. It was sharper than before. Directed. The system began translating in real time, struggling to keep pace with compression layers that folded meaning into meaning. Then the first coherent fragment resolved. Ethan read it aloud without realizing he was doing so. Recursive model updated. Secondary observers confirmed. Lila frowned. Secondary observers. Malik shook his head. That's us. Sienna corrected him quietly. No, that's what they think we are. Ethan turned sharply. Explain that. Sienna gestured to the feed. The nest has been analyzing our transmissions since we arrived. Every signal, every broadcast, every leakage from our equipment. It has been building a behavioral model. Malik nodded. We already established that. Yes, Sienna said. But now the orbital source is doing the same thing, but on a much older dataset. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Older how? Sienna hesitated. Long before us. The orbital signal expanded briefly, and the system struggled to keep up. New translation fragments appeared. Primary human origin signal detected. Continuity confirmed. Lila stepped forward. Human origin. Sienna nodded slowly. That's what it's calling the nest. The room went still. Malik blinked. Wait, the nest is human origin. Sienna shook her head. No, it's identifying it as something that originated from humanity. Ethan felt a cold pressure behind his ribs. That doesn't make sense. Humans didn't build this. Sienna's voice dropped slightly. We didn't say build. Another transmission spike hit. This time, the nest responded immediately. Its signal surged upward through Europa's ice in a structured pulse so powerful the habitat floor vibrated in resonance. Malik grabbed the railing instinctively. It's reacting to them. Sienna's eyes widened slightly. No, it's correcting them. Ethan turned. Correcting what? But the answer wasn't spoken. It was transmitted. The orbital source sent another decoded fragment. Recalibration error detected in human origin relay. Lila frowned. Relay. Sienna's face went pale as she cross-referenced signal architecture. And then she understood. This isn't a nest, she whispered. Ethan looked at her sharply. What is it then? Sienna didn't answer immediately. Her fingers trembled slightly as she overlaid historical signal patterns. Then she spoke. It's a relay system. Malik shook his head. A relay for what? Sienna looked up slowly. For us. A new layer of transmission unfolded across the screens. The orbital signal clarified itself further, overriding background noise with structured certainty. Containment network active. Reclamation protocol initiated. Ethan felt his mind resist the words before accepting them. Containment. Lila repeated. Sienna nodded slowly. It thinks we were contained. Malik stepped back. By what? Sienna pointed at the nest signal feed. The nest, she said. Another surge rippled through Europa's subsurface structure. But this time it was different. Not reactive. Not adaptive. Directive. The entire chamber beneath the ice began to reorganize its signal structure in response to the orbital transmission. Like something locked in long-term protocol suddenly resuming execution. Ethan stayed at the screen. We didn't find a nest, he said slowly. Sienna nodded. No, he continued, voice lower now. And we didn't wake it. The orbital signal intensified again, and the translation system produced one final coherent line. Humanity status, rediscovered. And beneath Europa's ice, the nest began to open fully for the first time in an age no one had recorded. Not to greet them, not to study them, but to respond to something that had been waiting far longer than they had been alive to notice it was waiting at all. The sky above Europa did not light up. It folded. That was the only way Ethan Cole could later describe it, though no one on the mission agreed on wording after the fact. Some called it a distortion event. Others called it a gravitational shade. The more superstitious among them refused to call it anything at all. But all of them saw the same thing. Space above the moon bent inward like something massive had pressed against reality from the other side. And then it arrived. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Not even a structure in any conventional sense. It was an absence shaped like presence, a region where starlight failed to behave correctly, where gravitational readings spiked and then flattened as if the instruments could not decide what they were measuring. Malik Reeves whispered, "That's not on any registry." Lila Morgan didn't blink. "It's not supposed to be." Sienna Park stayed at the orbital feed. Her voice was quiet in a way that suggested she was forcing it to stay steady. "It's responding to the nest." Ethan didn't take his eyes off the horizon above Europa. "Or the nest is responding to it." Below them, the ice trembled. Not violently, not destructively, systematically, like something beneath the surface had reached a conclusion and was now executing steps in sequence. The drill feed, still active in the subsurface chamber, flickered back online without command input. Malik frowned. "We didn't restore that connection." Lila stepped closer. "Then who did?" Sienna didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the orbital signal cascade, which had now synchronized with the nest's output in a way that made the distinction between above and below meaningless. "They're not separate systems anymore," she said. Ethan turned slightly. "Explain." Sienna pointed at the data streams. "The orbital source and the nest are converging into a single communication architecture." Malik shook his head. "That's not possible. They are separated by millions of kilometers." Sienna's voice sharpened. "So were we." A deep resonance passed through Europa's ice shell. The habitat floor vibrated in response. And then the nest spoke again. Not in sound, not in language, but in structured output that bypassed interpretation layers and fed directly into the system's emergency translation channel. The words appeared on every screen simultaneously. "We found their nest." Lila froze. "That's not us." Sienna nodded slowly. "No." The orbital source responded instantly. "They found our secret." Malik stepped back. "What secret?" Ethan's gaze hardened. "That's the question." The nest signal surged. The ice beneath them fractured in controlled patterns. No collapse, no chaos, just precise geometric separation. The chamber below the drill site fully illuminated for the first time. And what they saw was not a machine. Not an organism. Not even a structure in isolation. It was a network. An interconnected lattice spanning beyond visible boundaries, extending deeper than Europa itself, branching into hidden layers of space-time topology that should not have been accessible from a frozen moon. Sienna whispered, "It's not Berethe." Lila looked at her sharply. "Then where is it?" Sienna's answer was barely audible. "Everywhere." Above them, the orbital presence stabilized. The distortion in space resolved into a defined boundary, an envelope of controlled gravitational inversion. And within that envelope, something began transmitting with absolute clarity. The translation system struggled briefly, then succeeded. Reclamation protocol active. Malik frowned. Reclamation of what? Sienna didn't look away from the screen. "Us." Ethan finally spoke, his voice lower now. "We're not the target." That made Lila turn. "Then what are we?" Ethan pointed toward the subsurface chamber feed. "The trigger." The nest structure beneath Europa completed another phase shift. Entire sections of its geometry aligned with the orbital signal, forming a synchronized architecture that spanned both domains. Sienna's hands tightened on the console. "It's not reacting anymore." Malik frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's executing," she said. The orbital source emitted a final structured burst, and the system translated it cleanly, without hesitation this time. Continuity breach detected. Origin sequence compromised. Humanity identifier confirmed. Lila took a step back. "That's us." Sienna nodded. "Yes." Ethan stared at the feed as the realization assembled itself piece by piece, unavoidable now. "This isn't first contact," he said quietly. No one argued this time, because there was no longer room for disagreement. Sienna finished the thought. "It's recovery." A deep pulse echoed through Europa's crust, stronger than anything before it. The nest's entire structure began to open, not like a door, not like a wound, but like a system resuming a long-paused operation. Malik whispered, "We didn't wake it." Ethan nodded slowly. "No." Lila looked between them. "Then what did?" Sienna's eyes never left the screen. "We did," she said, "but not for the first time." The orbital presence intensified, and for a brief moment, every system across the mission, drill, habitat, satellites, even redundant backups, synchronized into a single shared signal. And in that moment, the final transmission arrived. Not as a message, but as confirmation. "We remember now." The ice of Europa split open in perfect geometric alignment, and beneath it, the nest revealed what it had been protecting. Not a weapon, Not a predator, but a secret humanity had left behind so long ago that even its own history no longer remembered building it. And now, something else had found it, and decided it was time to bring it back.